Good evening and welcome to KUTV Primetime News. Now, in today's bulletin, we've got an interview, a very heated interview for you regarding congenital heart defects which occur at birth. That and other stories in our headlines tonight. Kenya Kwanza wants Auditor General to probe funds used on the BBI bill. Matiang'i gives an assurance of tight security during the party nominations. Renowned businessman Jackson Kibor laid to rest at his home in Cabanas in Uasin Gishu County. Harrison Mutisia arrested in hiding after killing his 35-year-old lover. Welcome to the broadcast. My name is Daphne, Orina, and our sign language interpreter is Vivian Wangeshi. President Uhuru Kenyatta today at State House, Nairobi, received credentials from 9 envoys recently posted to Kenya. The president received diplomatic papers from Ambassadors Michael Lotem of Israel, Ye Sung-jun of the Republic of Korea, Okaniwa Ken from Japan, and Abrazak Lassel from Morocco. Others were Kalista Jenny Mutharika from Malawi, Marie Charlotte from the Philippines, Tarek Mohammad from Bangladesh, Gabriela Martin from Argentina, and Christopher James Thornley from Canada. Speaking at the ceremony, the president reiterated Kenya's commitment to consolidating bilateral ties with the new envoys from respective countries and wished them success as they begin their tour of duty in the country.
And this is our protocol officer. Success. Yes, well, the presence nowadays.
Elsewhere, the Kenya Kwanza Brigades want Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani and his Principal Secretary Julius Muia to be held accountable for any illegal utilization of the public funds in the process of promoting the Building Bridges initiative that was declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. Led by Musalia Mudavadi a day after the ruling, the Kenya Kwanza team have asked the Auditor General to undertake a forensic audit on all public funds spent on the BBI process.
Following the annulment of the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020, popularly referred to as the Building Bridges Initiative by the Apex Court, political leaders allied to Deputy President William Ruto-led Kenya Kwanza coalition have come out asking the promoters of the unconstitutional process to account for the public resources used in rallying for the BBI reggae. This while questioning the manner in which some members of the BBI Secretariat conducted the signature drive. Kenya Kwanza co-principal and ANC leader Musalia Mudavadi, while addressing the media after a Kenya Kwanza meeting in Lamu, said that President Uhuru Kenyatta and his handshake counterpart ODM leader Raila Odinga should be accountable to the public for their actions. Mudavadi further added that the members of parliament alleged to the Kenya Kwanza team will push for a motion compelling the Auditor General to do a forensic audit of all public funds used in the BBI process since its inception.
But we are aware that the Building Bridges Initiative Task Force spent approximately 10 billion Kenya shillings of public money in hotels, purportedly for collecting public views on the now declared unconstitutional bill. It is important to note that public funds used in the constitutional process were not appropriated by the National Assembly for the purpose, but were rather an illegal diversion of public funds by some public officials who decided to use their offices, to finance politics contrary to the Constitution and the Public Finance Management Act.
On Thursday, a section of Kenyans called out the Kenya Kwanza core principal, recalling that he was among those who spearheaded the initiative, having appended his signature on the bill. This is after he congratulated the Supreme Court judges for what he termed as a bold decision, while essentially puts a stop to the BBI reggae. On the other hand, still on matters BBI ruling, Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka has welcomed the decision by the Supreme Court, saying that the ruling paves way for a future review of the Constitution. However, Kalonzo has declared to go outright and defend President Uhuru Kenyatta against attacks by his estranged deputy William Ruto and his Kenya Kwanza brigade.
Ukweli ni kwamba miaka hii mitano, miaka 10 ya presidency ya Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, ile infrastructure ameleta Central Kenya, including ingine anafanya usiku. Kwa nataka watu wake hata wengine wasijue vile anafanya, because ni mtoto wenu. Mau roads, sijui nini ingine, zile pesa mkiangalia ambazo Uhuru ameweka Central Kenya akiwa president wa nchi hii, Kenya ingine ikijua itakuwa na wivu. Lakini ajabu, wenyewe wanasema hawamutaki.
Kalonzo faulted the Kenya Kwanza team for unfounded celebrations, adding that it was a win for both teams, pointing to the protection of the president from being sued while in office and further giving directions on the future process.
Ukweli ni kwamba miaka hii mitano, miaka 10 ya presidency ya Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, ile infrastructure ameleta Central Kenya, including ingine anafanya usiku. Kwa nataka watu wake hata wengine wasijue vile anafanya, because ni mtoto wenu. Mau roads, sijui nini ingine, zile pesa mkiangalia ambazo Uhuru ameweka Central Kenya akiwa president wa nchi hii, Kenya ingine ikijua itakuwa na wivu. Lakini ajabu, wenyewe wanasema hawamutaki.
And as the ruling continues to elicit mixed reactions among the public, the National Council of NGOs urges all Kenyans to accept the Supreme Court ruling on the Building Bridges initiative and move forward united as a nation. The NGO Council says it is committed to peace and sustainable development in Kenya and shall continue ensuring that all Kenyans coexist together as brothers and sisters. Samson Jura, KUTV.
Thank you, Samson. Moving on, Deputy President William Ruto has baptized March 31st as the official BBI Burial Day, saying that the supposed unstoppable reggae has finally been clogged. Musalia Mudavadi and Moses Wetangula followed suit in ridiculing their opponents over the fate of the initiative.
A day after the 7 judges of the Supreme Court gave their judgment, declaring the Building Bridges initiative as unconstitutional, the Kenya Kwanza Brigade has continued to chide their opponents, terming the ruling as the official burial of the BBI. Seemingly dancing on top of the initiative's grave, Ford Kenya Party leader Moses Wetangula turned his guns on KOTU Secretary General Francis Atwoli over his previous remarks where he termed the BBI as unstoppable.
Jana mulisikia tetemeko ya mahakama kuu Supreme Court. Wale watu walikuwa wanatusi watu. Kuna mzee wa Minyororo anaitwa Atwoli mwenye alikuwa anasema shenzi sana. Baada ya jana, nani ndiye mshenzi? Nani ndiye mshenzi?
After the fall of the BBI, Amani National Congress ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi termed the Azimio flag bearer Raila Odinga as a perennial loser who cannot take Kenya anywhere.
Unajua huyu jamaa
wa kuzimia mambo yake inaenda kukwisha. Mnajua hivyo? Imeenda. Sasa nataka niwaambie, sisi tunataka yule ambaye atashika uongozi ama watamu wa urais awe mtu ambaye anashika steering sawa. Lakini huyu jamaa kusinzia, hatuwezi tukakubali ashike steering, atatupeleka pahali pabaya.
Deputy President William Ruto took to the time to champion for the bottom-up economy, promising to revive the nation's fortunes if elected.
Najua jana ilikuwa mazishi ya BBI. So walikuwa wanaturingia nobody can stop reggae. Reggae imekwama haijakwama. Imesimama haijasimama. Imezimia hajazimia.
A previous statement by Raila Odinga stated that the Azimio candidate is ready to accept the final verdict and that in future he will be interested in making adjustments to the same to achieve the need of Kenyans. Alex Jomo, KU TV.
Politics aside, police and other security agencies have been mobilized and strategically deployed ahead of political party primaries that are expected to be hotly contested for in some regions. This was noted by Interior CS Dr. Fred Matiang'i in a meeting of concern with Interreligious Council of Kenya on the security state ahead of the primaries.
Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i has revealed that the multi-agency security team has already mapped out potential flashpoints in the party primaries exercise that begins in 2 weeks and that must be concluded by the 24th of April, according to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission IEBC timelines. The CAS was speaking at a consultative meeting with the Interreligious Council of Kenya IRCK, said the special deployment plan will be executed alongside heightened surveillance of political activities and the crackdown on hate speech and incitement. He expressed concerns with the prolonged political campaigns for exerting heavy strain on the police and other security resources as more officers are being dedicated to dealing with campaign-related conflicts. The CAS challenged the IEBC to strictly enforce the elections calendar, especially on official campaign window, citing that inclusive debate on election laws and campaign financing rules, which should have regulated spending by politicians, is only further constraining distribution of officers. The Religious Council, through its chair, Reverend Father Joseph Mutie, sought the CAS's guarantee that police and other security agencies will uphold neutrality during the elections and that IEBC staff will be provided with adequate security. An election mood is expected to flourish in the coming days, characterized with heated competition among aspiring candidates as various parties engage in nominations. Emmanuel Kutosi, KUTV.
Thank you, Kutosi. Elsewhere, NARC Kenya Party leader Martha Karua has held that Kenyans making hasty decisions in electing their preferred presidential leaders should not forget to elect sober leaders at the national, county, and ward levels.
Martha Karua, NARC Kenya's party leader, speaking during the 70th celebration of Maendeleo ya Wanawake Law Eastern Chapter, marked at Machakos People's Park in Machakos County, noted how Kenyans make the right decisions, electing their presidential candidate of choice, but fail to exercise their democratic right when electing those to represent them at the grassroots.
Chagua MCA na governor wema, alafu chagua MP mwema, alafu endelea. MP ni kusema women rep, constituency MP na senator, au wote ni parliamentarians. Malizia na rais, sababu tunamhitaji pia. Lakini ukichagua, ukifocus on presidency only, na ndio inafanya tuzozane, ukose kufocus on your county, you will suffer while your favorite president is seated in State House.
Karua further affirmed that the Maendeleo ya Wanawake is on the forefront to propel women in vying for more elective seats ahead of the August general elections and urged them to acknowledge unity in diversity in politics.
Kama huwezi kujipongeza na kujiamini, hutaamini mama mwenzako. Tafadhali tujiamini ndivyo tuweze kuaminiana. Na hata mama akipanda kwa mrengo isiyo yangu, nitafurahi, sababu hiyo inainua maendeleo ya akina mama. So in our unity in diversity, we should push for women to occupy top seats.
In an event graced by Principal Secretary Public Service Mary Kimunye, maendeleo ya wanawake National Chair Rahabu Muhiu, and Makueni County Governor Professor Kivutha Kibwana said women have the numbers to bring change in the country and their capability will only be tested in the August polls.
Mkipenda kuamua kubadilisha Kenya, mtabadilisha Kenya. Na najua chair wenu alisema jambo na labda mje create consensus enough, lakini mkipenda kubadilisha Kenya, nyinyi mna uwezo. Kwa hivyo Kenya isipobadilika, next time tutakuja nyinyi tuwaulize, what did you do?
Ahead of the August polls, women in the country have been continually encouraged to vie for elective posts for their impact to be felt in the country. Naida Chege, KUTV.
Pay attention to the adolescent boy child. A mother is not enough as a role model. They need their fathers.
Well, at that we take our first break, but we'll be back with the discussion of the night. Don't go too far.
Leo tunaangazia upanzi wa dania.
Nikiuza napata 15k kwa mwezi.
One seared steak together with ginger and garlic. This will be served together with sauteed carrots.
Unemployment has hit you hard. Your salary is meager. You decide to venture into business, but you're struggling to thrive in it. You would want to reap a big tip on how not to run into losses.
Forget the preachy business blogs, the hyperbolic motivational speeches, and all the roads down desperation.
Hope has come with model stories from small successful entrepreneurs. We tell you these tales weekly on The Budding Entrepreneur. Join us as we help you
access to knowledge, solution to unanswered questions.
Guidelines to pursuing your rights and repossessing your property, intellectual or material.
This and more only on Law Matters.
Hii leo tunaangazia upanzi wa dania.
Nikiuza napata 15k kwa mwezi.
Welcome to On Fleek, where we flow flawless and serve you the latest gossips,
bring you the current and latest fashion trends.
Talk to you about current life issues,
bring you guests related to lifestyle.
Do not miss out our show. I'll be your host, Stacey Atienu.
And I, Joy Nyambura. Don't miss out. Bye.
Karibu kwenye mitindo ya kipwani. Yaani unavyoona basi niko kipwani pwani tu.
Unapopika inatakana uko half cooked.
Tui ni nazi imekunwa, inawekwa kwa hii samaki juu. Wewe mwenyewe ukiangalia samaki, mtazamaji, utaona vile inapendeza.
Niko Kilifi, niko katika kaunti ya Kilifi, Bagavazi ya Gede.
Samaki mwenyewe ndio huyo. Huyo kidogo samaki iko dogo, iko na maajabu kwa sababu ni tumbo yake iko juu ya kichwa.
Karibu sana kwenye mitindo ya kipwani hapa KUTV, ukiwa nami nahodha mwendesha chombo, si mwingine bali ni bibie huwa linalonukia na kuvutia, Waridi Samu.
Stream live mitindo ya kipwani on our KUTV Facebook page every Saturday 4 p.m.
Welcome back. Ever heard of a congenital heart defect? Did you know you could be born with a heart disease that you never knew anything about and you didn't notice? Well, tonight we are joined by Dr. Naomi Gashara, a pediatric surgeon who's going to help us dissect through the defects, which are also a second leading cause of death in the first year of life after an infectious disease. Welcome, Dr. Naomi. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Naomi.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
My name is Dr. Naomi Gashara. I'm a pediatric cardiologist, not a surgeon.
Oh, pardon me.
So I deal with children who are born with heart defects and also those who acquire heart defects as they grow.
Okay. So just to get right into the discussion of the night, many people maybe wouldn't know what we mean by congenital heart defects. You could start by defining that for us and tell us some types of those defects.
Thank you. Congenital heart disease basically means you are born with a defect in the heart. Your heart is not normal. And those are the defects that are defined as faults, faults, all which could be different types. We have those that are born and they are pink in color. We have those that are born with defects and they are blue in color. And all of them will affect the growth of the child. So, for example, if I go into the details, we all remember, if you remember our biology, the heart had 4 chambers, or has 4 chambers. The upper chamber, which we call the atria, the lower chambers that we call the ventricles or the pumping chambers. We have 2 great vessels. One vessel comes from the right side and takes the blood to the lungs, where it is cleaned and it's also oxygenated. We have the one that goes loud the body, carrying the pink blood, which is the aorta. So those are the major parts of the heart, and each part could be affected. If you have a hole between the upper chamber, which are the atria, we'll call it an atrial septal defect. Some people refer it as the auricles. If you have it between the pumping chambers, which are the ventricles, we call it a ventricular septal defect. If you have it between the 2 great arteries, that's like a vessel, we call it a patent ductus arteriosus, which all of us are born with, and it is crucial for survival before birth. Ideally, it should close. If it does not close, then it becomes a defect.
Okay. You mentioned several types of the defects. Is there a way that, or rather, is there an instance where someone could have so many of those holes in their heart, and what is done at that instance?
Yes, you could have a single lesion, or you could have a combination. Single lesion, we may refer it as a simple heart defect. If you have multiple of them, then that becomes more of a complex congenital heart disease, and its management is also a bit complex. Unlike holes, if you have a ventricular septal defect that is between the pumps, and it is small, usually they close by themselves, what we refer as spontaneous closure. And quite a percentage of them will close before 1 year. However, if the defect is large, then it will not close, and we may have to intervene at some point.
Okay, so is it to say that everyone is born with that hole, which is expected to close on its own at 1 year?
No, what I said is the one that we are born with is a blood vessel between the 2 great vessels, and the 2 great vessels is the one that takes blood to the lungs for cleaning and oxygenating, and the one that circulates the blood, which we call the aorta, that is the one that closes usually within the first 1 to 2 weeks. It should be closed. If it doesn't close, then we will close it as the clinicians.
All right, thank you for
that.
The
one that I said, sorry. The one that I said may close by 1 year is a small defect between the pumping chambers, which are the ventricles.
All right, that's well noted. Moving on to the causes of those defects. Can you please highlight some of the causes? Is it just that the baby is inadvertently born with them, or there are some other factors that could lead to those defects to come up?
Some we don't have the causes. Others could be genetic, that is, they learn within the families. And others may be caused by our lifestyle, especially like those who take drugs, the smokers, the alcoholics. They may deliver children with heart problems.
Well, there are those children who have these holes in their hearts, and they realize later in life, when it's too late, that they had actually a heart defect. Could you highlight some of the signs and symptoms someone should look out for the congenital heart defects in their children?
Okay, the signs and symptoms basically depend on the complexity or how large the hole is. When you have a small hole, like between the pumping chambers, normally the child is asymptomatic. What do I mean by asymptomatic? They grow well, they play like other children, and only when they go to hospital because of something else like a cold, and a clinician listens and hears what we call a murmur. And a murmur is an abnormal sound from the heart. So those will grow well. However, you have those with large holes. Those are children right from birth who do not grow well. They will have what we call interrupted breastfeeding. And what do I mean by this? When they breastfeed, they tire. So they release the breast, try to sleep, but because they are not full, they keep waking up. Their weight gain is also quite low because they never feed enough. They also sweat quite a lot. They will breathe pretty fast, and they keep getting frequent chest infections or pneumonia. So they're in and out of hospital. Sometimes when you touch their chest, you may feel like the heart is beating fast. For those children who are put on mother's back, which is not very common these days, unless in rural areas, you could actually feel the heart pumping on your back. So those are the symptoms. When they grow a little bigger, they will not play and cope with their peers. It's unlike a child to start playing and get out of the play field. Children can play the whole day. So if you find a child who goes in, plays a little, comes out to rest, think about a problem, and it could be a heart problem. The others could be having a different color. You look at a baby, and especially when you compare with others, and this is more often with mothers who may be having one or more children, you find their colors are not okay. The tongue has a blue color. The figures don't look okay. Other babies like squatting. All the time they want to squat. This is not quite normal. If you see a baby who frequently squats, that is not normal. Those children should be taken to hospital for a checkup. So the salient features or the critical things to look at, if you see a baby who does not gain weight and who you think is feeding and actually is not feeding enough because they tire, these are babies to take to hospitals for checkups. Sweating, even when it is so cold, even in July, the sweat trickles. That is not normal. You keep changing their clothes because they are wet. That is also not normal. So these are some of the things that you should look out for.
Okay. Earlier on, I heard you mention of pneumonia, children with congenital heart defects prone to pneumonia. Are there other diseases that they are prone to for having those heart defects, and which are they?
Usually it's pneumonia, and the reason they'll get pneumonia is because the lungs are flooded with blood that passes through those holes. So, and blood is a very good media for infection. That is the main problem. When they grow up and they are big and they were missed, because we also have like 20-year-old who are diagnosed for the first time, they may present with stroke, and we have seen them because the blood was never filtered in the lungs. These are the ones who are mainly blue. And when they are blue, it means the blood does not pass through the lungs. So that blood which is not cleaned, has bacteria, goes to the brain, and they get what we call an abscess or pass in the brain, and that may cause a stroke. So we may see them for the first time where they are weak on one side, but those are mainly the big ones. Others will present like they have conversions because of the heart problem, and they have actually been given, they are treated like children with epilepsy, and it is not epilepsy. It is actually a child with a heart problem. But when you look at them closely, you see the color is not light. These are mainly the blue babies.
Okay, so is it to say that parents should look out for, or rather take precautionary measures and take their children for heart scans to determine whether they have those diseases, so that to avoid these instances?
They should. When they notice, like I keep emphasizing, for firstborn babies, sometimes the mothers are not sure what to look out for. But when they go to hospital, they should raise some of these concerns. I have seen, like recently I saw a mother, She's been going to the clinics. Her child is not gaining weight. And all what she is told is you're not feeding well, until she decided to change the hospital. And when she went to the next one, she told them the color is not right. And actually the baby was blue. And this was like a 6-month-old baby. So all along the mother was suspecting. But sometimes even nurse clinicians fail, because if a baby is not gaining weight, and this is not a first-time mother, don't keep telling them feed, feed, feed. Let them be checked. It could be a problem.
Okay, moving on.
There could be a problem.
Thank you very much, Dr. Naomi, for that. Moving on swiftly to a different section, which forms of treatment are accorded to these children with heart defects, and to what extremities should a certain type of treatment be applied?
Okay. Basically, the treatment depends on the lesion. We don't start treatment as soon as they are born in some cases. We can follow them up to 4 or 5 years. And like I said, some cases like the holes between the palms, when they are small, they will close. If they don't close, there are different methods. One, you can be taken to theater where you have an open heart surgery, meaning you will have a scar. You could be taken to another theater, which we call the catheterization laboratory, where you are closed with what we call a device. A device is a small gadget, and we go through the big vessels at the inguinal area. That is just at the thigh. And we are able to go from the big vessels right into the heart, right into where that lesion is, and close it. So you'll never have a scar, and nobody will ever know you are done in the procedure, but that is for the small lesions. However, there are some that don't have any other alternative except theater. The time of closure really depends on how serious the case is. There are some who are born blue, and we do surgeries as early as like 3 weeks. So it really depends on the condition.
Okay.
Others, we get them at 50 years, and it's the time we are closing them.
So there is another form you've not mentioned of a heart transplant. I'm curious to know, at what instance is a heart transplant required, and what criteria is followed before someone is actually approved for a heart transplant?
Heart transplant, I've not mentioned it because, one, we don't even offer it in Kenya.
Okay.
And even in those countries that offer them, these are cases where, like, you have what I would call a single ventricle. Single ventricle means you have one chamber instead of two. And your vessels cannot support the lung, or both the heart and the lung, because they work together. So in that case, you will need another transplant. You need a transplant from a child who has a normal heart, who has died of other causes and not the heart. It is not easy to do transplants, and the waiting list is usually very long in the countries that do them, because you have to wait for somebody to die of another cause, like an accident. The others who may have transplant are children born with normal hearts, but they fail at some point, so they are not able to sustain life. And however, whatever drugs you give, this heart is not pumping. So those are the groups that would get a transplant. So that one I was not to go into because we don't offer it.
Okay. To move on to another question, what is the probability of resurgence of a heart defect after one undergoes surgery?
This is not in congenital.
Okay.
Once you are done surgery, there are some operations that are done, and we know you might require another surgery, not because you have another defect that is coming up.
Okay.
It's because of probably the material that was used in the surgery that may cause a complication later.
All right, thank you for
But
that.
you don't get a new.
Thank you for that response. What's the worst case scenario of untreated congenital heart defects?
It causes lung pressures to really go up, and the lung pressure should be less than a third of the body pressure. Once it goes up, it changes the texture of the lung, and then you become what we say inoperable. So we don't operate on you. That is the worst scenario.
Okay.
You remain with your defects, you'll have many issues, and finally, just like anybody else, you'll succumb from the heart.
All right, as we veer to the closure of this conversation, could you perhaps give us some of the lifestyles people should adapt, people with congenital heart defect should adapt post and pre-surgery?
Well, the lifestyle is becoming a big topic these days, and not just for anybody with a heart problem, even those without. The junks that we are giving the babies. You'll have a heart problem and you are prone to developing another lifestyle illness like diabetes, hypertension. So these are things to be avoided. The other thing I would tell the parents is, even if your child has a heart problem, there is what they can do. Don't let them just sit down and gain weight, especially after they operated. Because you keep saying they have a problem. We operate them to make them normal again, and they should continue living like any other normal child. So they end up getting other lifestyle diseases just because they've been made lazy. And that, like I said, is mainly diabetes, hypertension, which is catching up with the children. It never used to be there.
Okay, so perhaps for the second last question, what's the life expectancy of those with congenital heart defects?
If they are treated, they live like any other. If they live like any other person, those who are not treated, I will not quite say I have the data at heart, but they will succumb earlier. I won't say like how many years, because we have not really done a study to see for how long they live. But the more they have complicated cases, some do not even go beyond 1 year of life. The complicated cases, most children don't go beyond 1 year of life.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Naomi, for joining us. I think that has been very informative, more especially to parents as they are going to note, I hope they have noted the symptoms and they're going to look out for that. We take another break, but don't go too far. We still got more.
This couple met in diaspora. They fell in love and had a child. They decided to move back home and make things official. Now, here is the bombshell. They found out that they were related. Wow. With Orbital Global, you can save yourself the embarrassment.
How well do you know your family lineage? Your cousins, uncles, aunties, nephews, nieces? Orbital is here for you. Visit www.orbitalglobal.com. Orbital Global, connecting families, uniting nations.
Hii leo tunaangazia upanzi wa dania.
Nikiuza napata 15k kwa mwezi.
Welcome back. Contention efforts to halt the burial of businessman Jackson Kibor hit a snag as he was laid to rest in his home in Cabanes in Uasin Gishu County. The three contentious persons demanded to be recognized as by the late Kibor's family. Kibor, who was ailing for a long time, died on March 16th. Former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, who was among chief guests, however, came under siege as unruly youth pelted his plane with rocks. Well, may his soul rest in eternal peace. Elsewhere, the national government has taken note of increasing problems in development progress as the Kenya Vision 2030 fast approaches in 8 years. Principal Secretary for Energy Gordon Kihalangwa says such growing problems will be taken into account as the preparations for the fourth medium-term plan 4 get underway.
The COVID-19 epidemic, which halted development efforts for 2 years, and the current Russia-Ukraine conflict, which appears to be having an influence in the country, are two major challenges facing the medium-term plans.
And so I'd like to...
According to the Principal Secretary for Energy, Gordon Kihalangwa, medium-term plans are blueprints for development that serve as a roadmap for implementing projects across the country. He explained that part of the planning process is taking stock of what was accomplished in the medium-term plan 3, as well as the problems that were encountered and the projects that were not completed.
Particularly in this county of Kakamega, what has been able to be achieved under the MTP3. And of course, we are looking at education, we are looking at development, we are looking at in the farming, in the agricultural sector, what has been achieved. And because that, you are talking about the people, population. For example, this county.
The PS stated that the government is committed to ensuring that the country develops while also encouraging stakeholders to submit input that will be taken into account.
The MTP3, what was of very big concern is that for almost 2 years we operated under COVID, and COVID had restrictions, so quite a number of things were. Right now we have also got, we are beginning to experience the effects of the war, of the Ukraine and Russia war. So those are some of the little challenges which are there. So what we are here today is that we want to hear from the stakeholders.
Dan Bota, Kakamega County Government Chief Officer Economic Planning, said Kakamega is one of the first counties to begin planning for the next cycle of the county integrated development plan, which runs from 2023 to 2027.
As a county, what we have done from the outset, we ensure that we have planning of SARS in each sector to support the sectors. You know, planning aspect is a technical area, and you cannot just leave it just like that, because the Department of Roads, of Health, and all this. So you have planning of SARS, technical officers there that help the sectors, or what we call ministries here.
The medium-term plans guide the Kenya Vision 2030, which aims to make Kenya a newly industrializing, middle-income industrialized country with a good quality of life for its population and clean and safe environments. Ida Kithinji, KUTV.
Elsewhere, Safaricom has partnered with the Gulf African Bank to introduce a Sharia-compliant finance service as inflation rises from 5.08% in February to 5.6% in March. Here is Eliud Mutwiri with these and many more on the KUTV Business Wrap.
KCB Group has received regulatory approval from the National Bank of Rwanda to merge its newly acquired bank, Popular do Rwanda, and KCB Bank Rwanda. The two banks will operate as a single entity named BPR Bank Rwanda Public Limited Company, with the KCB Group as the majority shareholder, effective today, April 1st, 2022. The combined entity will become the second largest bank in the Rwanda banking industry. Safaricom has partnered with the Gulf African Bank to introduce a Sharia-compliant mobile finance service. The bank will disburse cash up to a maximum of 20,000 Kenya shillings and will recover the amount plus a 5% margin, the repayment period being 30 days. Swivel, a technology startup allowing users to book seats in shuttles operating on fixed routes and timings from their mobile phones, has today announced that they are now registered on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange in New York. The public listing of the company will open more avenues for further investment in the company and allow it to scale its operations in its existing markets, including Kenya and beyond. The prices of essential items, including soap, cooking gas, and cooking oil, have risen by up to a third in the past 12 months, straining household budgets at a time when average private sector pay is growing at the slowest pace in a decade. According to data published by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, inflation rose from 5.08% in February to 5.6% in March on the back of a sharp increase in the prices of key household items. Cooking gas has recorded the biggest jump in price over the past year among items captured in the inflation report, pushing families to charcoal for cooking. Reporting for the KUTV Business News Desk, I'm Mutweri Eliud.
Resurgence of an ethnic clash between rival groups in Darfur, Sudan left 45 people dead. Meanwhile, on the ongoing Russia-Ukraine crisis, the European Union has warned that China risks jeopardizing the trade relations if it supports Moscow in the war. That and much more in our international news roundup.
Heavy clashes between rival groups in Sudan's Darfur left 45 people killed as tribal leaders reported that fighting persisted in the latest ethnic violence. Fresh fighting broke out on Tuesday between the ethnic Africa Falata people and an Arab tribe in the villages outside Nyala, the capital of South Darfur state. Women and children were among those killed in the fighting. And still in Africa, Tunisia's President Kais Saied dissolved the country's parliament by decree 8 months after suspending it in July paragraph. Saied suspended the elected chamber in July when he launched a paragraph that posed the most serious test of Tunisia's institutions since it transitioned to democracy after the 2011 revolution. He made the announcement at a meeting of the National Security Council hours after the parliamentary held a plenary session online and voted through a bill against his exceptional measures. And away from Africa, US President Joe Biden proposed raising taxes on the wealthiest Americans and corporations, outlining several initiatives in his 2023 budget aimed at bringing down the federal budget deficit and closing loopholes that allow the rich to lower their tax bills. Biden released a proposed minimum income tax rate of 20% applying to the highest earning Americans, marking the first time the White House has ever directly targeted billionaire wealth after a similar Democrat proposed measure failed to move forward last year. And finally, European Union and Chinese leaders have met for their first summit in 2 years, with Brussels pressing Beijing for assurance that it will neither supply Russia with arms nor help Moscow circumvent Western sanctions imposed over its full invasion of Ukraine. The EU officials say that any help to Russia will damage China's international reputation and jeopardize relations with its biggest trade partners of Europe and the United States. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi reiterated China's call for peace talks this week, adding that the legitimate concerns of all sides should be accommodated. And that's all we had for you in the International News Roundup. My name is Omondi Otieno.
Happening in sports, Kenya's national boxing team, the Hit Squad, will depart for the Africa Zone 3 Boxing Championships in Kinshasa on Sunday at midday. Head coach Benjamin Musa has exuded confidence ahead of their trip, saying his charges had sharpened their talons well enough to rip their opponents apart. Musa is said to pick his traveling contingent from the existing 26-member provisional squad, following an intensive month-long selection process at the Mathare Depot, where the team had pitched a non-residential training camp. Internationally, the draw for this year's World Cup has taken place in the shadows of Qatar's skyscrapers earlier tonight, with the seeded teams already aware of their fate in the forthcoming competition. Despite being regarded as the most controversial World Cup in history, due Well, at that juncture, we wrap up the bulletin tonight. Thank you for keeping it KUTV Primetime News. See you on our subsequent bulletins. My name is Daphne Orina, and our sign language interpreter is Vivian Wangeshi. Do have yourself a blissful night.